in high orbit above the fractured moon of Corvex 6. The floating triage hub known as Arc Spire Unit Theta served as the last resort for the wounded, the unwanted, and the forgotten. Pirates, soldiers, scientists, even dethroned dignitaries. When broken, they all ended up here. And under the unit scanners, their blood all glowed the same dull crimson. But something was different that cycle. The atmosphere inside the medical bay thickened with unease. Conversations between staff grew quiet. The lights near Isolation Pod 17 flickered, like they were nervous too. Inside that pod lay someone not restrained by shackles, but by the wariness of those assigned to save her. Her name had once held weight across the outer bands, Siratean, last of the Kalari Stormborn. Her species was rare and feared. Their nervous systems were laced with bioelectric filaments that could ignite the very air. Some believed the Kalari's heartbeat could fry a neural grid or halt a mech mid-stride. Sira had been pulled from the wreckage of an embassy shuttle that exploded near the Grinvar Belt, supposedly due to a conflict between trade delegates. Her condition was critical. Shattered ribs, torn lung membranes, internal shock. Still breathing, barely. And yet no one would go near her. Alien doctors from across 3 systems stood behind her isolation field, debating safety thresholds and insurance policies. Her readings caused the automed drones to glitch into fail-safe mode. None dared cross the containment line. Then Ray Calder arrived. Human, ex-frontier medic. No military rank, no fanfare. Just a duffel bag and a quiet expression that didn't belong to someone who had survived 3 planetary wars. He'd once patched together a squad using only scrap metal and a basic Regan kit. He had a reputation. Never walked away from the hard cases. The med unit noticed him immediately. His presence disrupted the silence. Something about his calm was unsettling to the chaos. "Who's in critical?" he asked, nodding to the glowing pod. "Kalari female," muttered the tech. "Unstable electric field. Could surge any second." Ray stepped forward, peering through the curved glass. Sira's skin shimmered like liquid chrome, veined with currents of bioluminescent green. She didn't look dangerous, just broken, like a crashed starship or a failed promise. "She's fading," he said simply. "We're awaiting permission to open the chamber," someone replied. "She's dangerous." "She doesn't need more delay," Ray cut in. "She needs care. You'll get fried." "She's a person," he said, already keying the manual override. "And she's my responsibility now." The seal broke with a soft hiss. Warm, ion-charged air brushed against his arms as he stepped inside. She was unconscious, but her body buzzed faintly, static dancing over her skin like whispers. The machines didn't know how to read her vitals. The bots wouldn't enter. So Ray worked alone. He laid out tools, old-school ones. No auto-suture, no AI assistant. Just hands, intuition, and a portable stabilizer. "Sira," he said, voice low, "you don't know me, but I'm not afraid of you." Her breathing stuttered. A faint twitch ran through her fingers. The plasma scorch marks along her side pulsed like fading comets. The first incision was delicate. Her biofield surged, crackling around his gloves. It should have knocked him back. It didn't. A whisper sliced through the silence. "Why aren't you afraid?" Ray looked into glowing green eyes, now open and locked onto his. "Because I've met monsters before," he said. "You're not one of them." She didn't argue. Maybe the pain was too sharp for words. Maybe she wanted to believe him. He repaired what he could. Regrew lung tissue, flushed the microshock wounds, patched the cracked sternum. She winced only once, when his hand brushed hers and her instinctive surge passed through him. He didn't flinch. "You felt that," she murmured. "Yeah, but you didn't pull away." "I'm still here, aren't I?" Outside, alien physicians exchanged silent looks. No one moved. No one interrupted. Over the next 2 cycles, Sira slowly healed. Ray didn't use AI diagnostics. He listened. He read muscle tension, breath patterns, and the subtle flickers in her electric field like a language. The bots called it outdated. He called it paying attention. One afternoon, as he adjusted the Regan mesh on her chest, she spoke again. "They used to put me in a containment suit. Said I was a hazard." "Were you?" "No." But they were scared. That was enough. He nodded, quiet. Fear often talks louder than truth. She studied him. Her eyes weren't just green. They held shards of violet, like glass beneath a storm cloud. I thought I was going to die in that wreck, she whispered. I thought I'd be court-martialed for treating you, Ray answered, giving her a crooked grin. You still might. They'll have to find me first. When her hand brushes again, another surge came, but softer, like trust trying to form. Why aren't you scared of what I am? She asked again. He met her eyes without blinking. Because I care more about who you are. For the first time in her life, the storm inside her didn't rage. It settled. 3 days later, a silent ship with corporate markings and obsidian plating docked to the edge of Arkspire. No announcements, no greetings. But everyone in command knew the deal. Kalari emissaries. Retrieval unit. Security doubled. Orders were simple. No contact, no provocation. Ray found Syrah pacing her room. Her movements were steadier now. The flicker around her skin more like a heartbeat than a threat. They're here, she said. He nodded. They'll take me back. Study me. Rewrite my file. You don't have to go. I might not have a say. My people don't like loose ends. They're still your people. Not anymore. Not since I became a complication. The room crackled with unspoken words. Ray stepped closer. Then I'll speak for you. You're human. They won't listen. He shrugged. Then they'll learn how. The emissaries entered not long after. 2 Kalari guards in armor that shimmered like polished obsidian. Their posture screamed control. Their tone dripped with apathy. We're here for the subject. She's not ready to be moved, Ray said flatly. You don't speak for us. I speak for my patient, and I say you wait. The Kalari looked at each other, calculating, annoyed, but they didn't push past him. Not yet. In the flickering light of Pod 17, Syrah stood not as a specimen or a soldier, but as someone who had finally been seen. And the storm inside her began to hum a different rhythm. Not fury. Hope. The emissaries didn't argue. They didn't have to. They just looked at Syrah, expressionless, silent, and then turned their backs, letting their contempt speak louder than words. The med ward held its breath as they walked out, their exit like a closing threat. Syrah eased down onto the edge of the bed, her voice barely above a whisper. They'll come back. Ray stood beside her, calm as ever. Then I'll still be here. You're not my guardian, she said, eyes fixed on nothing. I know, he replied. And that was why she let herself trust him. Not because he claimed to protect her, but because he never claimed her at all. That simulated evening, as Arkspire Unit Theta dimmed to its pre-programmed dusk cycle and the usual rhythms resumed, recalibrations, meal distributions, staff rotation, Syrah stood near the wide observation pane at the far end of her room. She stared into the endless night beyond the station's hull. She said nothing. Ray didn't say anything either. He just stood beside her, not offering contact, not guiding her anywhere, just there. For the first time in her life, she didn't dread tomorrow. The Kalari envoys didn't depart. They nested in the station's diplomatic wing, an elegant suite line with layered security and opaque intent. Meetings were quiet but constant. Their encrypted transmissions dodged Helios protocol, sent through untraceable frequencies. They didn't say much, but their presence spoke volumes. The staff noticed. They moved slower, talked softer, avoided eye contact with any Kalari insignia. Ray didn't change. Every morning, like clockwork, he showed up at Syrah's recovery unit with a cracked tablet and a lukewarm cup of bitter synth brew that passed for coffee. He took her vitals, updated the healing scaffold on her side, and stayed longer than he needed to. She never asked him to stay. She didn't need to. The way she glanced toward the door just before he arrived said enough. Her body had stabilized. Medical scans confirmed full organ regeneration. Her bioelectric surges were minimal now, no longer throwing the lights into panic mode. She could walk freely again. She had movement. But what was still broken couldn't be measured by any scanner. I don't even know what I am anymore, she said one morning, standing at the same observation pane. Her tone was flat, like she was reading from a file that no longer applied to her. To them, I'm unstable. To this place, I'm a liability. And to myself, I'm just noise. Ray finished his diagnostic without looking up. You're still here. That means you're a survivor. Is this what survival is? She asked, turning her head toward him. There was fury in her voice, but it was tired. Being dissected, avoided, tolerated? He met her gaze. I called the start of something new, and new things scare people. They always do. She studied him for a long moment. Why didn't you flinch? I used to, he said, until I realized that fear yells louder than the truth. The word stuck. She carried them long after he was gone that night. Then the alarms blared. Brief, jarring, and suddenly gone. A minor breach. But when Ray dug the logs, he found tampering. Sarah's records had been accessed from a restricted uplink. Her genome flagged. A partial download attempted. They didn't leave a name, but Ray didn't need one. He stormed into the diplomatic wing like a weapon without warning. The guards moved to stop him. Too slow. Inside, the Curry envoys stood in a shadowed chamber, polished armor reflecting the ambient light like mirrors of judgment. One of them spoke coolly. The science division requested a scan for preservation. Nothing invasive. She's not data, Ray said, slamming his tablet onto the table. She's not property. You speak like she's yours. She's no one's, he snapped, least of all yours. You let her bleed. You did nothing. Another envoy stepped forward, voice filtered through a reverb field. You're emotionally compromised. Step away from her care. Ray didn't flinch. I am compromised. Because where I'm from, we don't abandon people just because they make us nervous. No one spoke, so he left, jaw tight, pulse hot. He returned to Sarah's room later. She stood with her back to him, watching stars. You confronted them, she said, not turning. They tried to steal your DNA. You shouldn't have. I don't care what I should have done. She turned then. Her expression didn't burn with anger. It shimmered with something more fragile. You shouldn't care about me, she said, voice shaking. You don't know what I could become. I know what you are now, he said. He didn't reach for her, but he made space. Not a gesture of comfort, but of trust. She didn't take his hand, but she stepped closer. And in that step, something shifted. Not love, not a vow, but something raw and real. They weren't just doctor and patient anymore. They were each other's quiet, defiant shelter. The next 3 days passed in unspoken tension. Not between them. They spoke more now, sometimes about nothing. Ray told stories from Earth's windswept farm zones. Sarah told him about the glowing coral towers of her home sea trenches. She even laughed again, not often and never loudly, but enough to remember what it felt like. But outside her door, pressure mounted. The envoys had filed for official custody, called her a biological hazard. The station council had deferred judgment. A vote was coming. Ray knew what that meant, so he prepared. He compiled every scan, every recorded recovery metric, every note showing her control. Then he filed a Clause 17 advocacy writ, a seldom-used right allowing a caregiver to speak in place of a patient under certain gray area criteria. Sarah wasn't technically eligible, but she wasn't technically ineligible either. The petition passed. Ray was given 10 minutes to speak. Before leaving, he returned to her room. I'll fight for you, he said. She didn't answer right away. Then softly, if they take me, I'll go with you. She turned, really turned this time. I don't want to lose this, whatever it is. Then let's make sure you don't. When Ray stood before the station council, he didn't bring legislation. He didn't quote protocols. He told the truth. He told them about reaching through a containment field when no one else would, about repairing not just damaged tissue, but someone's sense of being, about seeing strength that didn't show up on charts. She's not a danger, he finished. She's alive. And that alone scares you. Maybe it should, because she's everything this place claims to protect, but never believed could exist. There was no applause, just silence. That evening the decision came. The council ruled in Sarah's favor. She would remain on Arkspire. No forced transfer. No surveillance collar. She was free. When Ray brought her the news, she said nothing. Then she let out a shaky breath and leaned into him, not falling, not hurt, just undone. He caught her. She didn't resist. The current she carried still pulsed beneath her skin, but now it synced with something deeper. Not fear, trust. The ruling changed everything. And nothing. Life on the station went on. Supply ships docked. Droids maintained routines. The staff kept moving. But now, when Syrah entered her room, conversation didn't die. It paused. Eyes still followed her, but they weren't afraid anymore. They were curious, respectful, maybe something like awe. She walked slower now, not from pain, but because she finally felt the weight of being seen, of being allowed to exist without threat. Droids recalibrated around her instead of shorting out. People greeted her, even if awkwardly. And one morning, while Ray adjusted her neural brace, she said it without preface. "You risked everything for me." "Why?" He didn't stop working. "Because you're worth it. You can't know that." "I do." She stared at him, sharp as ever. "Based on what?" He finally looked up. "Because you kept breathing when everything told you not to." The silence after was long, but it wasn't empty. "I don't want to be something you save," Syrah said quietly. "You weren't. I don't want to be something you fix. You weren't that either." She paused, watching him. "Then what am I to you, Ray?" He looked at her without blinking. "The most remarkable thing I've ever had the honor to stand beside." She stepped back, not in rejection, but because she believed him. And belief, real belief, scared her more than pain ever had. That night, while the lower ring of the station suffered a brief systems blackout, backup power took over. Lights flickered. Security lapsed. Medical access to several critical sectors was locked down. Ray was on duty, monitoring high-risk patients, when a sharp crackle hit the comms. Breach in 17C. A Valari warborn, sedated after a violent arrest on Jarrah's colony, had broken stasis. He was loose. And killing. Ray ran. Not because protocol demanded it, because someone had to. He arrived at the aftermath of screams, flickering red warning lights, guards unconscious in the halls. The corridors shimmered with malfunctioning force fields. In the center, already facing the threat, was Syrah, unarmed, alive, holding the line. She stood like a pillar of plasma, her body glowing faintly with a buildup of charge. Opposite her, the Valari towered, thick-scaled, snarling, dragging a broken weapon. "You don't want to do this," she said calmly, her voice steady despite the voltage building around her. He growled, "You're just another freak in a cage." Syrah didn't move. The walls buzzed with static. "I could have turned this place into glass the moment I woke up," she said, quiet but final. "Don't make me reconsider." Ray arrived just as the Valari lunged. He barely opened his mouth to shout before Syrah raised her hand. A whip of raw electric force snapped across the space like a scream. The blast was narrow, focus controlled. The mercenary dropped mid-stride, alive but paralyzed. Syrah exhaled. Her hands trembled, not from weakness, but from restraint. She turned toward Ray. "That wasn't for them," she said. "That was because you told me I could be more." He stepped forward, slow. "And you are." She let him hold her. Her charge whispered across his skin, soft sparks instead of surges. By morning, everyone knew. Half the station claimed she neutralized the threat without violence. The other half said she nearly vaporized the corridor. Neither version mattered. The result was the same. Syrah was no longer feared. She was respected. A commendation came from command. An outer sector xenobiologist requested a hologram interview to study her voltage control. Even the Kalari diplomats issued a formal apology, paired with suspiciously vague invitation to return for further evaluation. She deleted it before it finished decrypting. Ray watched it all unfold, proud but silent. When her name was added to Arkspire's honors registry, he didn't speak, didn't step forward. He stayed in the back, watching her decline the offer to make a statement. Later, She found him at the outer observation deck, standing in the soft pull of station gravity, the stars hanging just out of reach. "Think I should have said something?" she asked. He shook his head. "You already did. Just by being you." She stepped up beside him, body humming with soft light, voice quieter than usual. "I've been a weapon for so long. I didn't think I could be anything else." "You're not a weapon," Ray said. "Then what am I?" "You're lightning, Sarah, and lightning destroys, but also lights the way." She looked at him like she was seeing something new. "Is that what I've done for you? Lit something?" He gave a small, real smile. "You change how I see everything." The quiet wrapped around him like gravity. She reached for him, hand brushing his jaw, fingers sliding behind his neck. He didn't rush. He didn't ask. She didn't stop him. Their kiss wasn't explosive. It was charged, electric in a way the air hadn't felt in years. The lights flickered around them once, then settled. He didn't flinch. He never had. When they pulled away, the stars had shifted in the viewport, just slightly. She leaned her forehead against his. "Then let this be the beginning. I've been waiting for it since the moment I walked into your room." They stood there between steel and starlight, not healer and patient, not myth and medic, just two people who crossed a line the galaxy was too afraid to approach, and in doing so lit the path forward. They tried to keep it quiet. The closeness, the current between them, the change. But Arcspire was alive, full of whispers, rumors, and eyes that noticed. Some called it a scandal. Others, madness. Most just called it inevitable. Sarah changed, too. She no longer moved like someone anticipating rejection. She entered rooms like she belonged in them. She no longer shrank her field. She let it rise. She didn't hide her thoughts in council meetings. She offered insights, assisted in rounds, shared knowledge of Kalari physiology with a clarity and presence that made people stop and listen. Ray didn't stand behind her. He stood beside her, not as her defense, as her partner. Everyone saw it, and some didn't like it. One night, while helping recalibrate a neuromapping suite for a young alien with a regrown spinal stem, Sarah turned to him. "I'm not used to being part of something." He nodded. "Neither am I." But the calm didn't last. It never does. The breach came from a diplomatic courier. Unscanned, unquestioned. Inside a data package was a trigger. Not malware, not spyware. Something worse. A pulse designed to reactivate Sarah's dormant neural signature. The attack wasn't digital. It was personal. Her body seized before she could speak. Her field erupted, wild and brutal. Sirens screamed. Panels blew. Lights cracked. 2 techs went down. Ray moved instantly, but the air around her sparked like a live storm. He couldn't reach her. Didn't matter. He tore open a junction, jammed his forearm into the power reroute, and grounded her field into the station's structural grid. The lights died. So did she briefly. She woke hours later, head in his lap, his forehead bruised, his knuckles bloodied. "I thought I lost you," he whispered. "You didn't," she rasped. "You found me." Again, when she could stand, Ray traced the breach to a blacklisted Kalari faction. Military-grade encryption. Not officially sanctioned, but funded by someone who didn't want her free. The attack was a message. But now, she had one of her own. 2 weeks later, Sarah Tan stood before the Central Assembly, her image projected to every major hub and border station across the quadrant. "The virus was real," she began, voice calm. "But so am I." She paused, then continued. "I was born into a legacy of silence. I was meant to obey, to endure, to vanish. But I survived, not because of power or protocol, but because someone saw me as a person. And I will not return to silence." The chamber didn't cheer. It held still. The kind of stillness that precedes a shift, that changes things. Afterward, she found Ray in the medbay. Always there, always working. "You lit up the whole system," he said. "Did I burn it down?" He smiled. "Only the parts that needed to go." She walked straight into him, head on his chest, his arms wrapped around her, steady as ever. She wasn't fragile. She never had been. They didn't need vows. They'd already chosen each other long before anyone saw it. Together, they stepped out of the Medwing. Not legends, not symbols. Just two people who found light in the wreckage. And beyond the glass, the stars blinked in rhythm with her pulse. Alive, unbound, free,